Hey, what's up, y'all? Okay, listen. Pull your chair all the way in, because what I am about to lay on this table is not regular celebrity mess. This is not your everyday he said she said. This right here is a championship-level scandal with a drug test, a married man, a paradise vacation, and a second woman who decided the whole internet needed to know exactly where she was standing and exactly who she was standing next to. A world champion, y'all. A woman who has never taken a loss inside that ring, allegedly sitting in the middle of a love triangle that the wife already told us about months ago. And the wildest part? While everybody was toasting to her victory under the Hawaii sun, somebody else was already on that same island, sipping on that same sunshine, quietly letting the timeline know that the celebration had an extra guest. Stay right here, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand why people are calling this the messiest victory lap in boxing history, and why one little post from one little island might have just blown up everything. Now, before we get all the way into it, you already know how we do it over here. Everything you are about to hear is alleged. This is what the internet is piecing together, screenshot by screenshot, post by post, timeline by timeline. I am just here to lay the puzzle pieces out on the table so we can all look at the picture together, okay? So get your cup, get your snacks, and let's get into it, because baby, this one got layers on layers on layers. Now, if you don't know who Clarissa is, let me put you on real quick, because context matters here. Clarissa is not just some girl who got caught up with a rapper. Clarissa is a problem in that ring. We are talking multiple world titles, undisputed status, a woman who has carried women's boxing on her back for years when nobody wanted to give it a camera. She is the type of athlete that other athletes study. She came from nothing, y'all. Came from a city that chews people up, fought her way out with her hands, and became arguably the greatest female fighter of her generation. That matters. Remember that, because everything about this story hits different when you understand exactly who we are talking about. This is not a woman who needs anybody for clout. This is not a woman chasing a come-up off a man's name. Clarissa is the name. Clarissa is the headline. Clarissa is the moment. Which is exactly why what happened next has people so confused and so loud in these comment sections. And let me paint the full picture of what she carries, because I don't think people grasp it. This is a woman who headlined arenas when the network said women couldn't headline. This is a woman who fought for pay equity in her sport while she was still fighting in it. She didn't just win belts, y'all, she built a door and held it open for the girls coming behind her. Sponsors lined up. Little girls started boxing because of her. She became a walking, talking, punching example of what discipline looks like when it refuses to quit. That's the reputation walking into this storm. That's the name currently sitting next to words nobody ever expected to see beside it. And reputations like that don't bend easy, but baby, when they bend, the whole world hears the creak. That's the stakes. Remember the stakes, because every single thing I'm about to tell you lands on top of that legacy, and the higher the pedestal, the louder the wobble. So here's what went down. Reports started circulating that Clarissa got hit with a suspension over a drug test. Not a performance enhancer, not steroids, nothing like that. Marijuana. And the way it allegedly happened is where it gets strange, okay? Because from what her side is saying, they did a mouth swab, and that swab came back showing a small amount present. Small. And the moment Clarissa found out about that result, she reportedly didn't argue, didn't hide, didn't go quiet. She went straight and took a urine test on her own, and that test came back completely clean. Nothing in her system. Zero. Now, I need y'all to sit with that for a second, because that detail right there is the whole ballgame. A swab says one thing, a urine test hours later says another. And anybody who knows anything about how these tests work knows that gap matters. So now the question becomes, how did it get there? Was she actually smoking? Was she around somebody who was smoking? Was it contact? Because let's be real, y'all, there are documented cases of people popping positive off vitamins, off CBD products, off supplements that had things hidden in them that the label never mentioned. Nurses have lost whole careers behind gummies they thought were harmless. Athletes have lost medals behind creams and oils. We don't know. And Clarissa is out here fighting to clear her name, fighting publicly, fighting loud, the same way she fights in that ring. No retreat, no backing down. And let me explain something about the testing science real quick, because I did my homework before I pressed record, and y'all deserve the full picture. A mouth swab and a urine test are not measuring the same thing. A swab catches recent presence, what's sitting in your saliva, which can come from direct use, sure, but it can also come from environment, from contact, from being in a room, from sharing a drink, from a product with trace compounds in it. A urine test goes deeper and looks at what your body actually processed. So when one says positive and the other says nothing at all, that contradiction is not a technicality, y'all. That contradiction is the entire case. That's why her camp is fighting this so aggressively, because if the clean test stands, the positive one starts looking less like evidence and more like contamination. And if that turns out to be true, somebody owes this woman a public apology and possibly a whole lot more than that, because a suspension on a champion's record is not a footnote. It's a stain that follows every future headline, every negotiation, every legacy conversation. Forever. And look, on its own, that's a story. A champion fighting a suspension, defending her reputation, that's a headline. But y'all, the drug test is not even the part that has the internet in a chokehold. The drug test is the appetizer. Because while Clarissa was out here defending her professional name, her personal life was quietly catching fire behind her, and the smoke was already rolling under the door before anybody smelled it. Let's talk about the man at the center of this, because we have to. Papoose. Now, Papoose is a name that carries weight in hip-hop. A lyricist, respected in the culture, and for a long, long time, he was known as one half of one of hip-hop's most famous marriages. Papoose and Remy Ma. Y'all remember that love story. The loyalty through the prison bid. The vows. The whole black love brand they built in front of the cameras. For years, that was the image. Papoose, the devoted husband. Remy Ma, the queen he held down. That brand meant something to people. And that's exactly why what came out later hit so hard. Because somewhere along the line, that marriage cracked, and the person standing on the other side of that crack was none other than Clarissa. The champ. And when that relationship went public, the internet lost its collective mind, because as far as the paperwork is concerned, and this is important, y'all, write this down, Papoose is still legally married to Remy Ma. Married. On paper. Right now. Today. Now, people separate all the time. Marriages end, people move on, that's life, that's grown folk business. But the internet does not care about nuance, okay? The internet saw a champion, a woman at the absolute top of her sport, linked to a man who is still legally tied to one of the most famous women in rap. And the labels started flying. And one label, one ugly little label, started sticking harder than all the rest. People started calling Clarissa a champion and a side chick at the exact same time. And I had to stop when I heard that. I genuinely had to pause, because say what you want about the internet, but the internet knows how to craft a nickname that cuts. Champion and a side chick at the same time. That is not gossip phrasing anymore, y'all. That is a title. And titles like that don't wash off, no matter how many belts you got hanging on your wall. And here's the thing, this narrative didn't come out of nowhere. Because Remy Ma herself already cracked this door open a while back. Remy has already spoken publicly, and Remy did not whisper. Remy all but told the world that Clarissa was not the only woman in Papoose's orbit, and she used words that suggested the champ had been pressing, pushing, desperate even, to have Papoose locked down by her side. Now, let me be fair for a second. Remy Ma is not a neutral narrator in this story, okay? That's the estranged wife. That's a woman watching another woman step into a life she built. Her words come with seasoning, and I take them with a whole shaker of salt. But even with that salt, when a wife speaks, people listen. And when the wife's version of events starts matching up with later evidence, people stop listening and start believing. So that's the setup, y'all. A champion under fire professionally, fighting a drug suspension she says is bogus. A champion under fire personally, wearing a label she never asked for. And a man in the middle who, up to that point, had been letting the women in his life do all the talking. Keep that in your pocket, because we are going to come back to that silence. That silence is a whole character in this movie. Now, let me also be real about how we got here, because the relationship timeline matters. When Clarissa and Papoose first stepped out publicly, the reaction was split clean down the middle. Half the internet said, good for her, he's respected, he's solid, this could be a power couple. The other half said, hold on, isn't he still married? And that half never went away, y'all. That half just got quieter, waiting. People tried to make peace with it. The photos kept coming, the appearances kept coming, the support at her fights kept coming, and slowly the noise settled into a low hum. And I think a lot of folks, myself included, wanted to believe it. Wanted to believe that whatever the paperwork said, the love was real and the rest would sort itself out like grown folk business eventually does. That's the emotional backdrop. That's why this next part didn't just surprise people. It embarrassed people. Because a whole lot of the internet had talked themselves into rooting for this, and nobody likes realizing they cheered for a movie that might have had a deleted scene running the whole time. Now we get to Hawaii. Because this is where the story stops being messy and starts being cinematic, okay? Clarissa goes out and does what Clarissa does. She wins. Big win, dominant, the kind of performance that reminds everybody why she holds all that gold. And to celebrate, Papoose takes her to Hawaii. Paradise. Sun, ocean, champagne energy, the whole victory package. And listen, on the surface, that's a beautiful thing. A man celebrating his woman's success. Flying her out, showing her off, letting the world see them happy. The pictures looked good, y'all. I'm not even going to lie to you. The pictures looked like a couple that had finally made it through the noise and come out the other side smiling. But here's where the record scratches. Here's where the DJ stops the music and everybody at the party turns around at the same time. Because while Clarissa was out there glowing in that Hawaiian sun, celebrating the win of her life, another woman popped up. Allegedly. And this woman didn't pop up in New York. She didn't pop up in Jersey. She popped up in Hawaii. The same island. The same sunshine. The same ocean breeze. And she didn't hide it either, y'all. She put it out there for the world to see. Letting everybody know, in her own way, that she was in Hawaii too, sitting pretty, unbothered, glowing, like she had every right in the world to be there. I need y'all to understand the audacity math on that. Same trip. Same island. Same man. That is not a coincidence. Coincidences don't book flights. Coincidences don't request ocean views. Somebody had to know the schedule. Somebody had to know the island. Somebody had to pack a bag, get on a plane, and land in paradise knowing full well what posting from that location was going to do to the internet. Flights to Hawaii are not accidents, y'all. That is a decision with a boarding pass attached to it. And think about the timing, y'all, because the timing is what elevates this from rumor to strategy. She didn't post before the fight. She didn't post weeks after the trip. She posted while the celebration was still warm, while the victory photos were still circulating, while the internet's eyes were already pointed at that island. That's not random. That's a woman who understands exactly how attention works. You drop your message when the audience is already gathered. You don't shout into an empty room, you whisper into a crowded one and let the room do the shouting for you. And that's precisely what happened. Within hours, the post was everywhere. Screenshots, reaction videos, timelines, side-by-sides. One image from one account turned into 1,000 conversations, and every single one of those conversations led back to the same question. What was she doing there, and who told her where to be? Because let's be honest, y'all. Hawaii is a big concept, but it's a small place when you know the itinerary. You don't end up breathing the same celebration air as a champion and her man by accident. Somebody shared a location. Somebody shared a plan. And there are only so many people holding that calendar. And the way she did it, that's the part that really got the detectives in the comments section working overtime. She didn't rant. She didn't accuse. She didn't name names. She just posted herself, looking good, location doing all the talking, energy completely unbothered. One little post, dressed up like a vacation photo, functioning like a press release. Because everybody who had been following this story knew exactly what that meant the second it hit the timeline. That wasn't a woman sharing her trip. That was a woman planting a flag. That was a message with a smile on it. Now, for a minute, I tried to give this thing grace. I really did. I said, okay, maybe this is one misunderstanding. Maybe this is a fan reaching. Maybe this is the internet connecting dots that don't actually connect, because y'all know the internet loves to draw pictures out of nothing. But then the timeline people got involved, and baby, once the timeline people get involved, it's over. Because they started matching dates. They started matching locations. They started pulling up old posts, old stories, old sightings, and what they allegedly put together was not a moment. It was a pattern. And patterns, y'all, are a whole different animal than mistakes. A mistake is a night. A pattern is months. And according to what the internet has assembled, this situation allegedly stretched across months. Not one trip, not one post, not one slip in judgment. A sustained, quiet, running situation happening in the background while Clarissa was in training camp, while she was sparring, while she was cutting weight, while she was pouring everything she had into being great. Think about that. While she was in the gym sweating for a win he would later celebrate with her in paradise, there was allegedly another whole storyline running parallel the entire time. Undefeated in the ring. Untouchable in her weight class. And possibly the last person to know what was happening in her own relationship. And that, right there, is the part that genuinely made me sad for her, y'all. Because I don't care how famous you are, how rich you are, how many belts you own. Finding out the person you stood beside had a whole second chapter you never read. That hits the same whether you live in a mansion or a one-bedroom. That's a universal kind of hurt. Every woman watching this who has ever been blindsided knows exactly what that stomach drop feels like. And Clarissa, a woman who has stared down killers in that ring without blinking, is now stuck dealing with the one opponent she never trained for. Now let's talk about what she knew and when she knew it, because this matters. From what's being said, this is not even the first time smoke showed up around this situation. Word is Clarissa had already confronted Papoose about rumors before. Already had that conversation. Already looked this man in his face and asked the hard questions. And apparently she walked away from that conversation believing it was handled. Believing the chapter was closed. Believing the noise was just noise. And who among us hasn't done that? Who among us hasn't accepted the answer because accepting it was easier than burning everything down? That's not stupidity, y'all. That's love. That's trust. That's what people do when they've decided somebody is their person. But these new details. This Hawaii situation. That's not a reopened rumor. That's a reopened wound. Because now it's not whispers. Now it's geography. Now it's coordinates. Now it's a woman on the same island at the same time telling the whole world she's there and she's comfortable. You can't talk your way past a plane ticket. You can't explain away matching sand. And can we talk about what this does to a person psychologically, because I keep coming back to this. Clarissa is a fighter by trade and by nature. Her entire life is built on reading opponents, seeing the punch before it comes, adjusting in real time. That skill set works everywhere except one place, your own heart. In the ring, everybody across from her is honest about their intentions. They signed the contract. They're trying to take her head off and they don't pretend otherwise. But relationships don't come with contracts, y'all. The person standing across from you says they're on your side of the ring. So when the hit comes from that direction, there's no guard for it. There's no bob, no weave, no counterpunch. And I think that's why this story has grabbed people the way it has. Because it's the oldest story there is, dressed up in championship gold. The strongest person in the building getting caught by the one thing strength can't block. Everybody watching knows that feeling in some form, and that's why the comment sections aren't just gossiping, they're grieving with her and arguing for her and projecting every situation they ever survived onto hers. So now Clarissa is standing at a crossroads that no training camp prepares you for. Option 1, go public. Address it, name it, blow it up, and take control of the story before the story finishes eating her alive. That option costs her peace, costs her privacy, and turns her heartbreak into a permanent headline. Option 2, swallow it. Handle it behind closed doors, keep smiling for the cameras, keep posting the wins, and let the internet scream into the void until it finds something new to scream about. That option costs her something too, because silence reads like confirmation when the evidence is this loud. Either road takes something from her. There is no free exit on this highway. And everybody watching has a loud opinion about which road she should take, as if it's their heart on the line and not hers. And through all of this, y'all, through every screenshot, every theory, every timeline reconstruction, every comment section trial, one man has said absolutely nothing. Papoose. Silent. No statement. No denial. No explanation. Not a single word. And I need you to hear me when I say this, because I say it on this channel all the time, silence is an answer. Silence might be the loudest answer there is. Because when a man is innocent, when the stories are lies, when the internet is slandering his name and embarrassing the woman he claims to love, the natural human response is to defend. To correct. To say something. Anything. But when a man goes quiet this long, in a storm this loud, people stop waiting for the explanation and start writing it for him. And the versions the internet writes are never kinder than the truth. Now, in fairness, there are two ways to read that silence. Maybe Papoose is protecting himself legally. Maybe there's advice behind the scenes telling him to say nothing, post nothing, feed nothing. That's strategy, and strategy is smart. Or, maybe, there's simply nothing he can say that wouldn't make it worse. Maybe every true sentence is a confession and every false sentence is a lawsuit waiting to happen. I don't know which one it is, y'all. But I know this, every day that passes without a word, the story hardens. Cement dries, baby. And right now, the cement is drying in a shape that does not flatter him at all. And let's talk about what the culture expected from him specifically, because Papoose's entire public identity was built on loyalty. That's the brand. For years, the culture held this man up as the gold standard of holding somebody down. He wrote love into his lyrics. He stood in courtrooms. He made devotion part of his artistry. And I say this with no joy at all, but when your whole legend is loyalty, a scandal like this doesn't just damage you, it rewrites you. Every old lyric gets replayed with new ears. Every old interview gets clipped and captioned. The very thing that made people respect him becomes the measuring stick he now gets measured against. That's the trap of building a brand on virtue, y'all. The pedestal is made of glass, and everybody can see straight through it the moment a crack appears. Whether the allegations are fully true, half true, or a mess of misunderstanding, the silence leaves the glass cracked and the whole culture standing around staring at it. And meanwhile, the wife is watching all of this. Remy Ma. Imagine being Remy for a second. You told the world this man had a wandering situation. You told the world there were other women. And the world debated you, questioned you, some folks even dragged you for being bitter. And now here comes a whole vacation scandal with a second woman waving from the beach like she's in a music video. If even half of what's being alleged is true, Remy Ma is somewhere watching the internet do a slow, collective double-take in her direction. And whether she says anything about it or not, and so far she's been relatively measured, you already know that silence is loud too. There's a special kind of quiet that comes from watching your warnings turn into somebody else's headlines. But let's get back to the woman on the island, because her role in this movie deserves its own scene. Think about the confidence it takes to do what she allegedly did. To post from the same island, during the same trip, knowing the internet would decode it in under an hour. That is not the behavior of somebody who feels like a secret. Secrets don't post. Secrets don't glow. That is the behavior of somebody who feels secure. Somebody who feels like her position is solid enough to survive daylight. And y'all, that kind of confidence has to come from somewhere. Confidence like that is usually funded. It's funded by conversations, by assurances, by somebody on the other end of the phone making her feel like she's not the side of anything. That's the part people aren't saying out loud. A woman doesn't step into that kind of spotlight unless somebody made her believe the spotlight belonged to her too. So when you stack it all up, what do you actually have? You have a champion whose professional name is tangled up in a drug test she says is false. You have a champion whose personal name is tangled up in a marriage that isn't hers. You have a man in the middle saying nothing while two, maybe three women absorb all the public damage on his behalf. And you have a victory celebration that now lives on the internet as a crime scene photo. That is a heavy stack, y'all. That is a lot for one woman to carry on shoulders that already carry an entire sport. And here's the part one really want to talk about, the part bigger than Clarissa, bigger than Papoose, bigger than any single couple. Why is it always the women holding the microphone in situations like this? Think about it. Clarissa is the one answering questions. Clarissa is the one whose reputation is being picked apart. The other woman is the one getting dissected and discussed. Remy is the one whose old statements are being replayed and reevaluated. 3 women, 3 different kinds of scrutiny, all orbiting one silent man who hasn't had to answer for a single thing. The math on that is not mathing, and it never does. In almost every one of these stories, the man at the center becomes a footnote in his own scandal while the women become the entire headline. And we all participate in it, y'all. We do. The culture does. The blogs do. The comment sections do. And maybe that's a conversation worth having in the comments today, right along with everything else. And one more thing on the other woman, because I don't want to flatten her into a cartoon either, even though the internet already has. We don't know what she was told. We don't know what version of this story she received. If there's one thing situations like this teach you, it's that the person in the middle rarely hands out the same script to everybody. Maybe she was told the relationship was over in everything but paperwork. Maybe she was told she was the future and Clarissa was the headline. Maybe she knew everything and didn't care. I can't climb inside her phone, y'all, and neither can you. But what I can say is this, when a woman posts from paradise with that much calm on her face, one of 2 things is true. Either she believes her position is protected, or she has decided that burning it down publicly serves her better than protecting it quietly. Neither of those is the energy of somebody who thinks they're the secret. And if she never thought she was the secret, then somebody very close to the center of this story gave her every reason to believe it. Draw your own map from there, but make sure the map includes that detail. Now let me answer the question I know some of y'all are already typing. Does any of this change what Clarissa is in that ring? No. Absolutely not. Those belts were won with her hands, her conditioning, her heart, her discipline. A messy relationship doesn't erase a single round. A failed swab test that contradicts a clean urine test doesn't erase a single title defense. Whatever is happening in her personal life, the resume is the resume, and the resume is historically great. 2 things can be true at the same time, y'all. She can be the greatest of her generation and a woman currently learning a very public, very painful lesson about the man she chose. Greatness in the ring has never once guaranteed clarity outside of it. If anything, history says the opposite. The spotlight that makes you also exposes you. And I'll be honest with y'all, because I'm always honest with y'all. Part of why this story is so sticky is that it doesn't fit the script we wanted for her. We wanted the fairy tale ending. The champ and the rapper, the ride-or-die energy, the couple that beat the odds and shut up the haters. People were invested in that love story, genuinely invested, because after everything the culture watched Papoose and Remy go through, watching him show up for a champion felt like a plot twist people could root for. And that's exactly why this Hawaii situation landed like a betrayal to people who don't even know these folks. The audience wasn't just watching a couple. The audience was watching a story they had emotionally subscribed to. And when a story breaks mid-season, the viewers take it personally. So where does it go from here? That's the question everybody should be asking, because this story is nowhere near finished. Several things are still in motion. 1. The suspension fight. Clarissa is actively challenging that test result, and if her independent results hold up, there's a real chance this whole drug narrative collapses under its own contradiction. Watch that space, because if she clears her name officially, it changes the temperature of everything else. 2. The Hawaii receipts. The internet has a long memory and an even longer reach, and if there are more posts, more photos, more overlapping dates, they will surface. They always surface. 3. The man in the middle. At some point, the silence stops being strategy and starts being the story itself. There is a version of this where Papoose speaks, and everything shifts. There is a version where he doesn't, and the internet's version becomes the permanent record. Either way, a choice is coming, and the clock on that choice is ticking loud. And let me add one more layer before the last one, because the business side of this matters more than people realize. Clarissa is not just a fighter, she's an enterprise. Sponsorships, endorsements, appearances, a brand built on discipline and greatness. Companies attach themselves to champions because champions represent control. And this story, on every front, is a story about control slipping. A test result she can't fully control. A relationship narrative she never got to write. A man whose silence she can't break. The people who cut checks watch stories like this very carefully, y'all, not because they're moral judges, but because they're risk calculators. Which means the stakes of how she handles the next few weeks go beyond her heart. This is about the bag too. And honestly, if she navigates this the way she navigates a tough round, stays composed, adjusts, and comes out swinging with her name cleared and her head up, this whole saga could end up adding to the legend instead of subtracting from it. Redemption arcs are the most valuable currency in entertainment, and she is holding all the pieces of one right now. And 4, and this is the one I'm watching closest. Because beyond her, beyond him, beyond the island, there is the machine itself. The blogs are not done with this. The reaction channels are not done with this. Every party in this story has a phone, a platform, and a breaking point, and stories like this never end with a press release. They end with a leak, a live, a late-night post somebody deletes 10 minutes later but not fast enough. Screenshots are forever, y'all, and somebody always screenshots. The other woman has already shown us once that she knows how to make a single post do maximum damage. What happens if she decides to do it again with more than a location tag? What happens if Remy decides Measured is no longer working for her? What happens if a random bystander from that island, a hotel worker, a driver, a restaurant server, decides their 15 minutes is worth more than somebody else's privacy? That's the powder keg sitting under this whole story. It is not a question of whether more comes out. It's a question of who lights the next match and what Clarissa is standing next to when they do. Because champions can survive scandals, y'all, history proves that, but surviving is about positioning, and positioning starts with deciding what you will and will not stand next to. And 5, and this is the one I'm watching closest, what does Clarissa do? Does the champ go the distance with this relationship, absorb the hit, and keep fighting on both fronts, professional and personal? Or does she do what champions are trained to do when something isn't working, make the adjustment, cut the dead weight, and protect the legacy at all costs? Because if there is one thing we know about this woman, it's that she does not stay down. Not in that ring, and if history is any indication, not in life either. Whatever she chooses, she will choose it standing up. Now, I want to hear from y'all, and I mean really hear from you, because this one has layers and I know the comments are about to be a whole event. Question 1, does the clean urine test settle the drug issue for you, or does the positive swab still leave a cloud? Question 2, is posting from the same island proof of a pattern, or could this still be one gigantic, ugly coincidence? And question 3, the big one, if you were Clarissa, with everything on the table, the belts, the name, the man, the noise, what do you do next? Go public and own the story, or go silent and let it starve? Be honest, be respectful, and remember everything we've discussed tonight is alleged and still unfolding. And listen, before I get up out of here, let me say this. At the top of this video I told you this wasn't regular celebrity mess, and I hope by now you see why. This is a story about image and reality, about how fast a victory lap can turn into an interrogation room, about 3 women carrying weight that a silent man set down and walked away from. A champion and a side chick at the same time. That's the label the internet stamped on this story, and labels like that don't fade quietly. But let me offer one final reframe before we go, because labels are written by crowds and legacies are written by the people living them. Right now, Clarissa holds something more powerful than any nickname the timeline can manufacture. She holds the next move. If the clean test prevails, she walks out of the drug cloud with her gloves and her integrity intact. If she addresses the relationship on her own terms, she takes the microphone back from every stranger currently narrating her life. And if she decides that a man who lets 2 women absorb public fire while he says nothing is not a man worth defending, then she loses a boyfriend and keeps a dynasty. That is not a loss, y'all. That is a trade that champions make in every era, in every sport, in every walk of life. The ring taught her how to take a hit. Life is about to find out she learned the lesson well. But if there's one thing I know after covering this culture for as long as I have, it's that the final chapter is never the one the internet writes in the first week. The real ending belongs to the people living it. And something tells me, something deep in my spirit tells me, we have not heard the last word on this island situation. Not even close. My inbox is already warm, y'all. Receipts have a way of finding me, and when they do, you already know where the conversation continues. So if you're not already part of the family, fix that right now. Hit that subscribe button, tap the bell so you never miss when the next layer drops, and drop your take in the comments because I read every single one, and the best ones always end up in the next video. This story is still breathing, still moving, and the next update could come from anywhere, a post, a statement, a test result, a wife who decides she's done being measured. Whatever comes next, we will be right here breaking it down together. Thank y'all for rocking with me all the way to the end of this one. Stay safe, stay aware, watch the people around you, and remember, paradise always has witnesses. I'll talk to y'all real soon. Bye.